Welcome, Couch Potato Gang. You're now listening to the Binge-worthy podcast. Each week, we waste our time rating streaming and on-demand TV shows so you know what to click and what's just hey. Here's your host, author, blogger, vlogger, and all-around smooth dude, Jeray Davis.
Welcome back to the Binge-worthy podcast. Thank you for rocking out with me, man. Like, it has been a super long week, and I couldn't wait to get to this instead of all the other bullshit that I've been doing. It's just been one of those weeks that just drags, man. That 9 to 5 has just been dragging. And when you have a week like that, every day just seems to take super long, you know. But here we are on the day off, so I can get to you guys and give you the skinny on the stuff that you should be watching and the stuff you just flush down the damn toilet, you know. Now, if you haven't rocked out with us before, here's how it works. Each week, we rate one on-demand or streaming television show. Each show gets 3 rounds or 3 episodes to impress us because, let's keep it real, usually that first episode, that pilot episode is garbleito. It's usually straight trash, right? So it gets 3 episodes. Each episode gets its own rating, and then at the end, the show gets an overall bingeability rating. They can range from straight garbage to meh to I'll crack one to that to full on ready to binge, ready to crack it open and binge a 24 case or 18 case to that and get stupid drunk. This week's episode is about a television show that is on Amazon Prime. Who would have ever thought that the people I used to get all my Christmas gifts from, because I'm too lazy and really don't like being a lot around people in the stores during Christmas time, will also be the same people that would give me original content. So the name of the story, or the name of the television show, is called Mad Dogs. Mad Dogs. It's a story about old college buddies that get together and get into shit. And that story never gets old, does it? And if you can't tell, that's what we in the biz like to call sarcasm. Like, that trope has been used a million times. So that kind of, you know, I deducted a point from that right off the top. It is an hour runtime, 10 episodes, only 1 season. I don't think there's any plans for a second season. I know you're thinking to yourself, well, if there's no second season, Jeray, why would we want to binge on this? Just because it's only 1 season doesn't mean it's not entertaining or that it's not worth watching. I mean, think about it. You go to the movies, and a movie is what? An hour and a half to 2 hours, right? And that's it. And it's over. You're getting 10 episodes at 1 hour a piece. So that's 10 hours of viewing time, right? So if that's not worth it, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what is. The cast is Ben Chaplin, who plays Joel. Romany Malco plays Gus. I don't know if you guys remember him. He played in Weeds. He was also in 40-Year-Old Virgin. You know, really funny guy. Michael Imperioli plays Lex. This is also the same gentleman that played in The Sopranos, one of the biggest shows on HBO, and just one of the biggest shows, period. Steve Zahn, also a well-known comedic actor, plays Kobe. And Billy Zane, my man Billy Zane, plays Milo. So you got, right off the top, about 3 comedic actors, and that should let you know that it's not going to be all serious. You know, it's going to be a mixture of some serious shit and also some things to make you laugh. Now, the cast, I'm not going to lie, you know, it impressed me. Most of the original content that, you know, that I watch usually has people that I'm not familiar with. Like I said before in another episode, that doesn't mean that you guys have never seen them anywhere before, but it's people I don't know from Adam. You know, usually like non-name brand actors that they can get for a cheaper price. So the main premise to this story is that these college buddies have been invited to Belize by one of the more successful guys in the group. They haven't seen each other in years as well. So I went into this story blind. I didn't do any research on it or, really look at the cast or anything until after really I was already looking at it. And so all of my reaction to it is pretty organic. Now you start getting introduced to the characters one by one as they start to arrive at the airport in Belize. And like I said, I was impressed once I started one by one seeing these people that I was familiar with kind of show up on screen. So I was hyped. I was amped to see where this thing was gonna go. But at the same time, I was also thinking that possibly this is a bootleg version of The Hangover, that's where we're going. But it did take another turn, right? So these guys, with the exception of Billy Zane, all meet up at the airport. And they walk outside for transportation, and there's a limo driver waiting for them with a sign that says losers, right? So this is an indication of how the character that's played by Billy Zane feels about them, right? And you're thinking, okay, maybe that's just like the stuff that they do. They throw jabs at each other. I mean, that's what guys do when we get together. We just talk shit. We talk shit all the time, and it's nothing personal. It's just how we interact. But this is really how this guy feels. So they get to his house, which was not a house. It was a villa with, gate at the front with the video camera, and you got to put in the code and all that type of rich shit. And so then this introduces Billy Zane's character, and you can tell that he's rich, but also you can detect that this money is illegal, right? You just get that sense right off the top. But let me just back up for 1 second. When I saw Billy Zane come on camera, I almost had a mangasm, because I haven't seen Billy Zane in anything in recent times, but I know that he's like a awesome fucking actor. So for me, that made me even more interested. Now I'm feeling like this show might really be viable because you have a real actor in here. And also Ben Chaplin too. I don't want to leave him out. These are guys that really give you some good acting. But anyway, back to the storyline. So once everybody meets up, they decide to go out on the town. He's gonna show everybody around, have a good time, dinner, drinks. But everywhere they go, the character played by Billy Zane, named Milo, is kind of off to the side, and he's just watching and observing like a douchebag. He's nice one moment, but then he's kind of a douchebag in the next moment. It's like that sweet and sour kind of thing, and you get the feeling that in his mind he is superior to these guys that he has invited. They didn't just show up at his doorstep. He invited them out to Belize, one of the most beautiful third world countries in the world. But you're also getting these not so subtle hints as the night goes on that Milo is into some shit. He's into something illegal. Like I said, it's not something that you watch and you feel smart because you put it together on your own. It's blatant. Intentionally, the writers want you to know that this is what he's doing before they go into the rest of the story. There's a guy that approaches him on the street, talking about dropping off a package and shit like that. And so for me, it made it obvious that he was doing something that kind of had to do with drugs. That was my surmisation, especially, having been around people who live that life. He wills the villa to all his friends, just like, in the middle of the conversation, he tells them that if anything happens to him, he's put it in his will that they're going to receive this villa. So why would you even bring up, something happening to you, something dangerous happening to you, unless you thought there was a possibility that really some shit was going to happen to you? Just kind of made it intentionally obvious. Later on, after he had declined to take this package from the guy, and it's gone to the next day, now they've woken up from their drunken stupor, they find a goat. A dead goat floating in his pool, and he makes one of the guys, Steve Zahn's character Kobe, he makes him go in and retrieve the goat, because Kobe is supposed to be like the stupid one that everybody just kind of takes advantage of. They then decide to go take this boat ride, but this isn't just a boat, this is a yacht, right? So they're on this yacht, they're partying, they're having fun, and then Milo reveals that the boat is not his, that he has stolen this boat. And so everybody starts freaking out, and they're like, take us back. And he switches into douchebag mode, cuts the boat off, and he turns around like, if I don't take you back, like, what are you going to do really? Like, what are you going to do? And these guys are so pussy that nobody says anything. And so he just kind of goes back to, manning this boat, captaining this boat. Now they drop the boat off. He tells them that the boat belonged to the guy that I guess he had refused to take the package from. And, the people in Belize do this shit all the time. It's a dog eat dog kind of world. And if he just let somebody put a dead goat in this pool and does nothing in return, that it could lead to some dangerous outcome. And so he had to show them that he is not a bitch and steal this guy's boat. They decide that, well, really Milo decides that they're going to leave this boat and hike back. So they're hiking back through the terrain of Belize, and they weren't prepared for that. It's not like they had on some Timberland hiking boots or something like that. They were dressed, for a yacht, for hanging out on the yacht, linens and shit like that, but they're hiking back through the woods and through the jungle, and finally they make it back to the house. And you have a scene where all the characters minus Milo are together, and they're discussing that something is fucking wrong with this guy. Something's wrong. They're not feeling it, and they want to go back home. And of course, he kind of comes out of nowhere as they're having this conversation, like, "Oh, you want to leave?" Everybody gets that awkward silence going on, but one of them does speak up, and then behind that, the character Gus kind of piggybacks on that and says that yeah, we're getting out of here. And he asks them just to stay for dinner. If they want to leave after that, then they can leave. He'll pay for the plane and all that himself. Now, as they're having dinner, the douche meter gets dialed all the fucking way up, right? The douche meter is like in the red, and the arm is about to break, the glass is about to crack. One by one, he goes around the table and tells each of these guys really what he thinks about them, and how he does not, I guess, personally care for him. He's saying pretty much that each one of these guys has wasted their lives, they're not shit. Before he can really seal the deal on this thing, they're interrupted by somebody that looks like Peter Dinklage's size in a cat mask, like a full-on cat mask that surrounds the whole entire head. And I'm thinking, okay, either this is Peter Dinklage or this is Tattoo from Fantasy Island. But before I can even get to that, this guy who has the cat mask on blows Milo's brains all over the table. I mean, all over the table. He's got chunks. He's got Campbell's chunky soup all in the cracks of the table, right? And they actually showed, I was surprised. I thought they were just going to kind of insinuate that his head had been blown open, but they actually show the side of his head where the bullet exited. And so he has like this gaping hole. The chunks are all over people. So the guy with the cat mask on says that he wants his boat back. He wants his boat back, and they have 24 hours to retrieve it and deliver it, or else. So everybody's freaking out in this moment because they just seen a man have his brains blasted open all over the table, which is not, normal shit for somebody to see. And ironically, the character Kobe, who's supposed to be the stupid one, becomes the most rational one out of everybody there. And so he comes with a plan to clean up the house and discard the body so they can get the hell out of there, right? And go back to the United States, forget the shit ever happened. And that's what they start doing. They start bleaching everything down, wiping tables down, mopping. They're pulling bits of his thoughts out of cracks and stuff like that. They roll his ass up in a carpet, and then they take him into his own yard on his villa on that property and bury the body. But before they can actually make any other moves to get back to the United States, Kobe realizes that he has left a video camera on the boat, and everybody is in that video. So if the police or anybody find that video, of course, they're all going to go down for this cat's murder, right? And They also find out that the person that the boat was taken from via the cops, via a detective, that he is crazy as a soup sandwich, right? Like, not like a normal gangster crazy, but like, cut off your hands and feet kind of crazy dude. And so now that leaves them on a mission to go retrieve the boat and retrieve the camera within that 24 hours. That's the set of events that have been set off. A fun fact is that this show was actually a remake. There was a show of the same name. I believe it was overseas, and it has pretty much the same exact storyline. Max Beasley was in it. Now, the guy Billy Chaplin in this particular version of the show, the Amazon version of the show, was also in the other version of the show. But he played the Billy Zane kind of character in that version. But his name was like Al Grove or something like that. And there's also a character in the Amazon version named Al Grove as a nod back to that particular version. There's also a young lady, Maria Boto, who was in both of the shows as well. Now, a side note is, or a tip, is that if you're watching this on Amazon Prime, it's kind of giving you that 4K look. I don't know if it's 4K, but it looked like that to me. The look and feel of it was crisp and vibrant, so it's easy to look at, which makes it even more entertaining. Especially when it's set in the backdrop of Belize and you got all this, tropical water behind you that's glistening and shit like that, and the sun is out. The 4K makes it look awesome. When you're watching Amazon, if you hit the pause button at any particular time, it tells you at the bottom with pictures who is in that particular scene. So if you're watching a scene and you're like, man, who is that actress? You know what I mean? And you hit pause, it automatically will bring up that person's name. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, some things that I didn't like about the show, or about this particular episode, because I hadn't watched the show at this particular time. One was the whole college buddy trope thing. Like that to me, if I see that shit one more time, I might blow my brains out into Chunky Campbell soup all over the table. It's just been done so many times, the pack of guys. Think about it. And in the Hangover, it's called Wolf Pack. They call themselves the Wolf Pack, and then this is called Mad Dogs. The second thing I didn't like, which really isn't something wrong with the story, this is just some personal shit. I was pissed that they killed Billy Zane. You know what I mean? That in the first episode, he's gone and he doesn't even really get to get his shine on in the rest of this series. My third beef is also a personal beef, and that's it. There's one brother on the show played by Romany Malco, and they turned him into a straight bitch. And I don't know no brothers like that, man. But from the time that he came on screen, man, they really just played his character out. One at the dinner table, prior to the dinner table, when they went out on the town and they were in a restaurant, and this, really beautiful young lady came up, and Billy Zane's character is introducing each one of the college friends one by one, and he tells this lady, how good of friends he is with each one of them. But when it gets to the character Gus, played by Romany Malco, he just says, oh, he's divorced, right? And I was like, okay, I can move on. When they came back from dropping off the boat and they had hiked through the jungle and he's bleeding and shit, right? When they cut to the next scene, when everybody's back at the villa, everybody has washed up and changed clothes except for him. He comes to the dinner table, still looking funky as hell, still in the same raggedy, blood-stained clothes. Then, when Milo gets his brains blown out, he was the most bitchy one, and the little cat dude, Peter Dinklage in the mask, comes to him and takes a cotton swab of the inside of his mouth so they can frame him for the murder if necessary. And then he just wipes blood on his face, like in a homoerotic kind of way. Then, oh, you thought I was done? No. Then, after they clean up the blood and bury the body, now he decides to go take a shower. Out of all time, he decides to go take a shower, but not really to get clean. He goes to take a shower so he can cry and nobody can see his tears. How many brothers do you know that are that soft? I don't know that many. But that was a personal thing. Now, getting back to the actual story, the only thing that I really didn't like was the fact that it seemed like it took a long time to get to the point. We all knew where this shit was going. You could tell where the story was going, but it just dragged out until the very end. Now, a lot of things that I like here. The character Milo, played by Billy Zane, was douchey as hell, and that made me mad as hell, which means that he was doing his job good. If you can invoke some kind of emotion from me just from watching the television show, that means you're doing a good job, right? He obviously suspended my disbelief. The dinner scene where he was really going in on these guys was also an awesome scene. It was very tense, and it had good exposition without being over the top with it and making it obvious that I'm just trying to give you some facts about these guys. The acting is solid, and I mean, of course, you have Ben Chaplin, who's a good actor, and also Billy Zane, and the comedic actors also have their moments. So it's entertaining. That's exactly what we want. We don't want something that takes itself too serious to the point where it's not entertaining and now it's a fucking math quiz, right? The screenplay is solid. The obvious stuff really didn't bother me because I knew that was the desired effect that the writers were looking for. They wanted to spoon feed you these things that would give you knowledge on what was happening, like I said, so you didn't have to guess. If I didn't have to go to sleep that night, I had to go to sleep so I can get up in the morning and go to work, I probably would have watched one or two more episodes. That's the feeling that I had at the end of this show, or at the end of this episode, was, man, I really want to see what happens in episode 2. And I'm looking at that little preview in the bottom right hand corner that says, oh, this show is going to start in 4 seconds. And I let it go. I let it come on and play for a minute or two because I wanted to see. So obviously that's a good sign. And so this episode gets the Bavarian shout, no doubt. Episode 2. They should rename this episode Shit Sand. Yes, shit sand. Not quicksand, shit sand. Because it seemed like every time they were trying to get out of something, to work their way out of something, they just sunk deeper into shit. That's the only way I could describe it. Like, I felt bad for these guys. They were having such a tremendous hard time trying to get to their goal, which was to bring the boat back to Peter Dinklage in the cat mask, right? They are able to find the boat, right? They're able to find the boat, and what happens is the character Lexi goes to start this boat back up. He gets it to come on, and first of all, they find the boat with no fucking navigational skills, but somehow they're able to get there. As soon as they get on the boat, they find the camera that Kobe had left. It's still sitting in the same exact spot. Nobody else is on the boat. And like I said, Lexi starts the boat up. They're all cheering. But somehow I had a feeling that I really could not be happy with them in that moment, because I just knew some shit was going to happen. And it did. They get accosted by some European type drug dealers. And my problem with this scene was that if you're a drug dealer, like, you could not tell that these guys were squares, that they were straight squares. He hops on the boat and just immediately starts talking to them about, making an exchange in the drop spot and why, you're here early and all this stuff. Like, you should have automatically been able to tell that something was wrong and that these were not the people you were supposed to meet. If anything, hell, I would have thought they were the cops because they were so square. He hops on the boat with a impact driver in his hand and just immediately opens up the floor on the boat, and underneath that floorboard was cocaine, bricks of cocaine. I mean, more bricks than a mason. He had more bricks than the third little piggy. He had more bricks than Shaquille O'Neal at the free throw line. More bricks than a bad ass injection. Is that too many bricks? Okay. All right, let's get back to it. So as he's retrieving these bricks, Lex tries to help. That's how you know these guys are squares. He tries to help by like handing him the bricks. Like, who the hell does that? And they're at gunpoint. I just want to throw that in there as well. So the guy gets pissed off. You know, him and his wife get pissed off. Like, well, why did you touch the drugs? And he removes a spark plug from the boat that they need to get the hell out of there as repercussions for touching this coke, right? As if it's going to damage it, because the coke is wrapped in about, 3 inches of plastic. Like, let's come on. So now they can't drive this boat, and they have to take that same walk back through the rainforest of Belize, even though there's no rainforest, but back through the forest of Belize to the villa. But now they don't have Billy Zane's character with them to guide, and so they're kind of just feeling their way around and trying to remember the path. They stop for a second. Gus gets an idea, and just because he gets an idea doesn't mean that something has changed for him. There is no tough guy character arc for him. All right, he is still a bitch. But he gets an idea for them to split up. One group of guys or two of the guys will stay with this bag of money because when the guy took the drugs, he gave them a bag of money to deliver back to the gentleman they're supposed to be delivering the boat to. And of course, there's like a prelude to what's going to happen, because when he gives them the money, he tells them, hey, nothing better happen to this money before you give it to the guy. So now we know something's going to happen to the money. But anyway, 2 guys are going to stay with the money. The other 2 guys are going to go. Instead of getting a fuse for the boat, they're going to get a rental car, leave the money in it, park it somewhere, and then get the hell out of Dodge and tell the drug dealer guy where he can find the money, right? But it can't be that simple of a fix. Now, Lex and Kobe are the characters that they have tasked with going to retrieve some mode of transportation. So they make it back to the villa. They grab Milo's gun and a package that was on the ground, and they make it back to Gus and the other character. What the hell was his name? His name was Joel. So they make it back to Gus and Joel, who are still there sitting with the money. They all get in the car together. They get a rental car. And so that it can't be this simple. That something's going to happen. So they're kind of tailing each other through the streets of Belize, looking for a spot to park this car with the money in it so they can get the hell out. Gus and Kobe are in the rental car. They get to arguing, and Gus crashes into somebody else's car with the rental car. And a crowd of like 100 people come out. The person is making this spectacle of it. They all put their money together, all the money they had on hand in their pockets, and they give it to this young lady. The character Joel comes up. There was a pistol inside that package that was left at the villa. So he pulls this pistol out and tries to threaten her with it, thinking that that's going to make it go away. And she doesn't feel threatened at all. So she starts acting even more reckless. There's even more of a crowd coming around. One of the characters goes to the bag of money and just, peels off one of the little stats. Now, it had to have been at least, I think they said it was $7 million that was in the bag. So he peels off just one bill. It's probably like, I don't know. I don't know if there's such thing as a $5,000 bill or something like that, because there wasn't that many stacks in the bag. But he gives it to her. She's still not satisfied. And unrealistically, she's asking what's in the car. She switches from the fact that they have crashed into her car to wanting to know what's in the trunk of this rental car. And like I said, 100 people are standing around as this is happening. So she goes to the trunk and takes a stack of the money out herself, and they let it go down. That stack had to at least been worth $100,000 or something like that. The police come up, but now she's satisfied, so she doesn't make a stink because she has this bread. Everybody kind of goes their own way. Now they have to go back to the rental car place and get another rental car to ditch with the money in it, which they do. Back at the villa, there's a dog that belonged to Milo that has now dug up his master. His feet and shit are hanging out of the dirt. They're scrambling around like the Three Stooges, trying to get rid of this body. So they decide they're going to put him in the freezer of all places. Now, this is not like a commercial deep freezer or something like that. This is just your regular residential house freezer. You know, the one that has the piece where you can put your water cup under there and get water. So they're going to put him in the same place where people keep their Tostinos, you know. The detective, a policewoman, she shows up, detective, and Gus goes to meet her at the gate trying to stall her, but she starts working him, you know what police do, like on some first 48 shit, trying to get him to snitch. And it starts to work. And she's about to flip Gus into telling on everybody and taking a flight home. That was the offer that she made him, was that if he tells, she'll give him a flight home free of charge. But Lex happens to be able to witness this on the cameras, the security cameras of the villa. And he gets scared, you know, rightfully so. He gets scared and he decides the better option is to let her in versus leaving her alone with Gus, where he may tell everybody and tell about the body that's buried and what happened and so on and so forth. They have a better chance of figuring this thing out if they let her in and you know, just see what she has to say. If everybody's there, they can kind of fight together and get rid of her. Or at least that's what they're hoping. They're hoping they can get rid of her and get back to what they were going to do, you know, which is trying to figure out how they're going to dig themselves out of this shit mess, this shit sand that they put themselves in. Now, some pros to the show, or this episode, was that it had a great pace. It never lagged for one moment, and it increased gradually over the course of the episode. So there was never a point really where I lost interest in what was happening. And you know how you do. You start going to your phone, doing other shit, doing homework, doing work, talking to your kids, whatever it is, you know, that you do when a show is not giving you when a show is not keeping your attention the way it's supposed to. You know, you may even give your wife some conversation at that point. It's okay to talk to her. Yeah. It was funny. The show was funny. Now the comedic actors are getting a chance to kind of flex their wings and show what they can do. So you're getting a mixture of the comedy, but also a sense of danger at the same exact time. So you always had a feeling that there was a threat looming in the background the whole entire time. And you know that there's more to this story, you know, that secrets are going to unfold, because what you started to get from the screenplay was that these characters all have a backstory. When the characters had to split up and Gus had to stay with Joel and Lex with Kobe, they're having these personal conversations. Like I said, they haven't seen each other in years. And so you're starting to find out that they've all been living lies, right? And they're questioning who each other are right now in this present moment and not believing really what they've been told by the other person, right? These outlandish stories of what they're doing with their lives and so on and so forth. And that also creates a sense of dissension, some conflict between all the characters, because they know that they're lying to each other, right? Milo just had the biggest lie, and his lie ended up being the most dangerous lie because it sucked all of them in, but none of them really could judge the other about lying because they were all doing it. What I didn't like, there wasn't really much that I didn't like about this episode. I was really kind of digging this. You know, the only thing that I if I had to say I didn't like something, you know, was the whole accident scene. It was just too convenient, you know, and I've expressed this already. It was just too convenient. And I know that because this lady took this stack of bread, that they're going to have to explain this missing money, right? I told you, when the guy gave them the money on the boat and he said, you know, make sure nothing happens to this money, I knew something was going to happen to the money, and sure shit, something did happen to the money. But you know it's going to set off another chain of events that's going to create even more danger for them and make it even more difficult for them to make it out of the situation and back to the United States. But that was it. Like I said, I was engrossed in what was happening the whole time. It was a solid episode. It was funny. I laughed, but I also did kind of sit at the edge of my seat, you know, kind of like clenching, because I just didn't know what was going to happen next. And sometimes So this episode also gets the Bavarian shout. Episode 3. Now, when we left off with episode 2, Gus was about to flip on his homeboys, right? It's always the people closest to you. They're the ones that do it to you, you know? This was not like an episode of Power where Tasha is, getting questioned and she has nothing to say. You could tell Gus was about to give up everything. He was about to tell everybody his social security numbers and blood types that the cop asked. And so, like I said, Lex let her in. So now this cop wants to interrogate each character one by one. And you can tell that she is obviously not going away, that she's going to become a thorn in these guys' side. She does not believe shit they're saying. And her character is going to become that cliche detective that kind of knows everything before it happens, shows up at all the right places at all the right times, I've met detectives in real life. They're not that fucking smart. The guys are running out of time. They're supposed to have retrieved this boat and delivered it back to the drug dealer within 24 hours. And now they have 4 hours left. 4. And they have to go find the rental car where they left the money, because during the interrogation, the female detective found out that this car existed. She feels something is not right, and so now she's on a mission to also find the car. And if she finds the car and it has the money in it, that's going to cause problems for them. How are they going to explain $7 million or now $6.9 million just sitting in the trunk of a car? So they set off to do that, and they do find the car. They take the money out, but of course they're still short. They're still short this money, so they have to figure out how they can get this money back. So that sets them off on a mission to go looking for the young lady that had taken the money initially, which they do, and they find her, and they kind of just tell her the truth in an effort to get the money back. Unfortunately, her mother had already spent some of it, so they were only able to retrieve a portion of it back. And it was about $10,000. The mom spent $5,000 or something like that. So they're still short. And whoever this drug dealer guy is, he's gonna be so crazy that 5,000 out of 7 million is gonna mean a whole hell of a lot to him, right? The detective, like I said, then also finds this young lady and questions her about these guys and their involvement with her, with Milo, so on and so forth. Something that you're also seeing in this episode is deeper, intimate conflicts between these guys. So Gus and Lex kind of have a falling out. Kobe and Joel, you see the seeds being planted there. There was a scene where they went to something like a Western Union, and Kobe had to call his wife to get her to transfer some money, but he didn't know her telephone number. And he's like, well, who the hell knows telephone numbers these days? We all have cell phones. And Joel kind of gives this look, and he writes the number down and gives it to Gus to give to Kobe. So you know that this is something that's going to cause a problem between them. Now, the problem between Gus and Lex has to do with Gus preventing Lex from getting a job back in the day. He had asked Gus for a letter of recommendation, and instead of getting a letter of recommendation, Gus just kind of shitted on him with that employer and prevented him from getting that job. So this story is not just about the drugs and the boat and the threat of the drug dealer. It's also about the relationship that these four gentlemen have, right? They're supposed to be college buddies, but you see there's obviously a lot of conflict between these guys. And all of this was there prior to Milo asking them to come together. You get a sense that had he not asked them to come together to come visit him, that more than likely they would not have found each other, right? For whatever reason. They decide that the best option for them is to go find this boat again. Right, to go find this boat again. They make it to the boat, but again, I just felt like I couldn't celebrate with them. They made it to the boat, and they had all of these not spark plugs, but they had all these fuses with them to help get the boat started. But shit goes left, just as I suspected. When they start the boat up, they find out that the boat is stuck. So there's no bringing the boat back. However, the story does end with a win for these guys. When they get back to the villa, the little dwarf guy with the cat mask is there waiting for them, right? And he's ready to do damage because they didn't retrieve the boat like they said they would. They didn't bring the boat back in the 24 hours, and so they all are like fighting this one guy. Now he's like 4'11", and they're having the hardest time possible restraining him, and he's like growling like a dog or something like that. But finally they get him tied to a chair, and the stupid character Kobe wants to do damage to him. Lex is feeling, now he's the BIH, you know what I mean? He doesn't want to do anything, even though this guy just blew your friend's brains all over the place like 2 days ago, and he was gonna kill you too, right? So why not get rid of him? But what they decided to do is just put him in a chair. They tied him to the chair, and they didn't tie him with rope. They saran wrapped him to the chair, like they're about to put him in the freezer, like some leftovers or something like that. And they hoist this chair up over a well that was at the villa and drop him down into the well, but not into the water. Just kind of suspend him there. So if he were to get loose, he probably will fall into the well, and there'd be no way to get out. So this episode was funny. That shit was funny as hell, but still somber at the same time. It was sobering as we're developing the conflict between these guys. As you're starting to see that, and you're rooting for them to win. Like, you really want them to win. You want them to get out of the situation, but you just know it's not gonna happen. Like, God just is not on their side, man. You know what I mean? It's just one thing after the other. But sometimes that could cause like a sensory, not deprivation, but what's that called? I can't think of what it's called now, but it's basically when you get exposed to something so much that you become desensitized to it. And that can happen, in a movie or in a TV show. If someone continues to use the same effect or the same joke or whatever, it just has less meaning. And so in the story, and over the course of these 3 episodes, they're constantly bombarded with problems, with things going wrong, but it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old to you. You don't become desensitized to it. Like, every time it happens, you're just like, oh man, like I can't believe it, because you really want to see these guys win, and it's just not happening. So episode 3, it didn't let down. It nothing changed from episode 2. This episode was still the shit. I still want to see what's gonna happen. Like, I want to finish this thing out. So episode 3 also gets the Bavarian shout. Overall rating on this show. I mean, I think you can tell where this is going, because no episode got a bad rating. Like, if you get a 5 out of, on each episode, and you average that out, it's still a 5. You know what I mean? So my overall rating for this show is not going to change. This show gets the 18 pack or the 24 case. Let's crack it open and let's binge on it till we get shit faced. Once again, man, I just want to thank you all for hanging out with me and talking about this show. Really, I'm doing all the talking. There's no conversation. I'm doing all the talking. Make sure you check me out on my website at jarraydavis.com. That's Jarray Davis. That's DAVIS as in Sam.com, where everything I do kind of converges in one spot. You can also find all my social media there. My other podcasts, Good People Do Bad Things, previews to my books, everything about me. If you want to know fun facts or unfun facts, all of that's there as well. So check me out. And until next time, man, let's binge. Let's binge out, brother. I'll see you again on the next episode of Binge Worthy. See you next week, fam. Peace.